Aloha, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the official Ronnie Landis podcast show. And of course, I am your host, Ronnie Landis. I'm also the founder and leading educator of the Holistic Health Mastery certification course. This is by far one of the world's most comprehensive, in-depth, and in my opinion, well-organized integrative nutrition and health courses that you'll ever find. Definitely that I've ever found, and I've scoured the internet for the best of the best, which is actually what led me to creating this course 2 years ago in the first place. And by the feedback that we've gotten over the last 2 years and the continuous feedback that I keep getting almost every single day from our students all over the world, I feel strongly and can easily stand behind those words. So you can find more information about that at holistichealthmastery.com. So getting into our episode for today. Wow. Geez, like that's the best way for me to introduce it, I guess, because I bring on somebody who has been an inspiration to me over the years, and I've loved his work. Dr. John Gray, you might remember the famous book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, literally one of the best-selling books in the world in history. Really, that was an amazing fact when I found that out. But that classic book really set the stage for his career and his overall message in terms of relationship dynamics and the incredible work he's done in that field. And I've always been inspired by that work. And the more I've listened to Dr. John Gray, in more recent years, I just really paid attention to the focus he has on cognitive health, on emotional stability, on psychological health, and healthy lifestyle, and how all those things coincide together. They're not mutually exclusive. They're not individual or independent from one another. They actually fit in together. And our relationships, as I've been saying for many years in my work as a nutrition specialist, is that our relationships and our state of mind and our state of emotion have everything to do with our fuel, how we are fueling ourselves through our nutrition and how our lifestyle is organized. And I just really appreciated Dr. Gray's incredible perspectives on this subject. I mean, this episode is a special 90-minute episode because this man is such a wealth of information. He's a powerhouse. I mean, he just keeps going and going. And I just remember getting up really early in the morning to be able to get on the air with him. And he really just is just incredible. He's 63 years old. I think that was the thing that was most impressive because his energy is contagious and it's full on. He's just a firecracker and he's still going. And the information that he shares in this interview is it's second to none. It's absolutely incredible. I was highly impressed. I was honored to be a part of it, and I am excited to share it with you. So instead of trying to give any more of a descriptive about the episode, why don't we just jump full on into the episode with Dr. John Gray. Enjoy. John Gray is the leading relationship expert in the world. His relationship and health books have sold over 50 million copies in 50 different languages. His groundbreaking work, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, is the best-selling non-fiction book of all time. It launched his Mars-Venus book series that forever changed the way men and women view their relationships. John helps men and women better understand and respect their differences in both personal and professional relationships. His approach combines specific communication techniques with healthy, nutritional choices that create the brain and body chemistry for lasting health, happiness, and romance. His many books, videos, workshops, and seminars provide practical insights to effectively manage stress and improve relationships at all stages of life and love. Welcome to the show.
So happy to be with you.
Yeah, this is something I've been looking forward to for quite some time, and we definitely have a lot to dive into. I want to mention this too. This is kind of a staggering statement here. Your book, your original book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, is the best-selling nonfiction book of all time. That's correct?
Yeah. Yeah, in hardback. Yep.
That's a pretty amazing thing.
It was. It was mainly, I mean, it continues to sell in the United States around 200,000 copies a year, which any bestseller actually only sells that as well, but they tend to do it in a week period or a 3-week period. But during the 90s is when USA Today reported #1 bestseller of all books, not just hardback books, but it stayed almost 5 years on the New York Times list #1 while it was in hardback. So it's done amazing. I mean, but see, I travel around the world. It's still selling 1 million a year in China. Russia, I go to Russia, I speak to 10,000 people at a time. You know, people are still hungry for this information. So many people in America already have it. And you can buy so many used versions, by the way, for a penny, for $1. You can get it booked out. So it's definitely saturated our culture.
Yeah, and it's such a foundation, in the field of relationships, sacred relationships. One might even say towards the realm of sacred sexuality, and like really what's more common you see nowadays. Whereas when you put the book out, it wasn't as, you didn't see this kind of thing as much. Now it's not really taboo. These conversations around different dynamics around the masculine and feminine. And I would love to hear from you. What do you, after all these years, what do you attribute the success of the book to?
Well, it's a good book. It also has a good title, but it actually was a bestseller for many, many years in Germany, #1. And the title was Men and Women Are Different. So it's a good title, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And I have to say, I took 3 years to come up with that. I mean, I was so frustrated. And so I got to find, this is back in 1982, I got to find a fun way to talk about this, because at the time, in the late 70s and early 80s, there was men's movements and women's movements, but you couldn't put them in the same room at the same time. Mm. And that's what I took on, because as a marriage counselor, you got to bring men and women together. And I had to find a way to explore our differences in such a positive way, because the feminist movement, while it had many good qualities, the bad qualities of it were that it basically made men wrong and wanted to feminize men.
Right.
And I saw that just didn't work for relationships. I'm a hands-on in the office, 8 hours a day, listening to women, talk about their marriages and complain about men. And it actually helped my marriage tremendously. I've been married 30 years, and it helped my marriage because I realized if I left my wife, I'd be with one of these women. They're all the same on one level. So you got to learn how to solve those problems, and so that you don't have all this tension and resentment and misunderstanding. And so I just set forth with the basic premise that basically women are wonderful and men are wonderful, and let's see how we can come together. And it wasn't just a fleeting thought or an attitude. That was my attitude, as opposed to seeing what's wrong with men, what's wrong with women, which is often what people think when they have relationships end and so forth. But it's my foundation for developing the ideas of Men Are From Mars was very, very unique, in that I wasn't so much indoctrinated with what they were teaching in the feminist psychology classes. I had spent 9 years before all that as a celibate monk, and not in relationships, but actually finding my spiritual fulfillment. And that was a huge drive in my life. Of course, it still is. The spirituality is the foundation of everything I talk about, because the essence of spirituality is love. And so I had learned through my meditation to find this source inside of me, which was always fulfilled. I mean, I'm a really happy guy, but what happened after 9 years is I couldn't stay happy in one part of me, because my brother was bipolar, and I had to go and help him, and meditation didn't do it. Yoga didn't do it. So I went to study psychology and got a PhD in psychology and taught courses on on psychology because I had a really good gift for it. And part of it is that I was approaching men and women from a place of unconditional love, which means a non-judgmental awareness. When things can be right or wrong, but you rise above that and you go, regardless of what you think is right, what you think is wrong, what works, what doesn't work. I just teach women, okay, what's going to work to bring out the best in this man, and men, what's going to work to bring out the best in women. And what I saw is so much of the 70s and 80s, and still now in psychology classes, there's this leaning towards feminizing men. And I go, that doesn't work. And we already have men, which we'll get into today. I hope we'll talk about health and wellness and the crisis for men of low testosterone, which is happening. And, there's a direct correlation between our libido, our aliveness, our interest in monogamy, our ability to keep passion alive with our testosterone levels, as well as our health. Men get heart attacks when their testosterone levels drop. They get prostate cancer when their testosterone levels drop. So many things about that we're going through this crisis, and our relationships can be this huge testosterone booster by helping men be more masculine and helping women be more feminine, because what's happening as women are going way to their masculine side, it has a sort of a rebound effect, whereas men go, okay, well, I'll go to my female. Because see, what pulls out the masculine is a sense of, I got to do this, nobody else is. Whenever you feel like it's up to you, and I got to do this and nobody else is, that's masculinity. And you can measure it actually in the body, because as soon as you're in a situation where it's up to me and nobody's going to do it for me, then your testosterone levels rise. And today, men's testosterone levels are just drooping. It's not healthy for us. I'm 64 now. My testosterone levels are the same as when I was in the first time I had them checked, which is in my early 30s. I hadn't checked it before then, but I know what it takes to keep your testosterone levels up. And your average man at 40, it's already dropping significantly. And by 50, it's half of what it was as a younger man. And this is not good for our health. It's not good for our relationships. It's not good for our well-being. It's not good for our self-esteem. Low testosterone causes men to become moody, irritable, grumpy, inflexible, unloving, and then they have to keep finding new relationships to feel stimulated. So I'm really big on helping men be more masculine, and that doesn't, because see, from my perspective, masculine is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And as soon as women started becoming more independent, they don't need men as much for financial security. They don't need men as much for safety in the outer world, so to speak. They can take care of themselves. So what does a man have to do? And a long time ago, not that long ago, a man felt like, oh man, I got to get up and get out there and make money to support my wife and my children. And if I don't do it, nobody else will. And that pressure is beneficial if men are taught how to do it and deal with this. They need training, they need education and so forth, and they build confidence. But pressure without confidence causes stress. But pressure with confidence is what pulls, it's what you're doing right now. We're doing a show. It's pressure. You got to do it right. You don't want to make mistakes, and that raises your testosterone, and you feel great because you're good at what you do. But when you don't have that pressure in overall life, men are just becoming way more feminine, which on one level is really good. It's like we're saying, hey, I don't want to just do some job I'm not fulfilled in. I want to find a job which is fulfilling. That's the more conscious man. He says, I'll still work hard, but I want my work to be something that's personally fulfilling for me. And as opposed to, the man working in a coal mine, there's nothing fulfilling about working in a coal mine, except that when you come home, you bring home the bacon, your wife's happy to see you, and you feel like you're a hero because you're doing what they can't do for themselves. But men don't have that anymore. So we're kind of a blend of masculine and feminine, but the challenge for us is to stay over in the masculine side. And that's what I did with my Mars-Venus material. Nobody was doing that. They were feminizing men, telling men to be like women. And part of it is that you have to realize that psychology a lot of it comes from men and women just thinking how the world should be, which is fantasy. Then the other side of it is good therapists who are down in the trenches, so to speak, helping people. 90% of the people who come to counseling are women. So the techniques you develop to help people like that work for women. They don't work for men. So I came along and said, hey, guess what? The emperor has no clothes. Men and women really are different. We need to respect those differences. We need to honor those differences and honor each other. So the answer is love, but it's not like we're all going to blend in to become the same. That's a huge mistake, and still people are making it. But I think my message is out there, and it's now kind of like common. It's almost a cliche now, but this was an original idea back in the 70s, 80s, which was, we are different. We can have equal respect. We can have equality and also respect our differences. And it just needed to be articulated more clearly. It's not really that much of an original idea. If you look at what a university is, look at the word university, diversity, unity in diversity. That's what we're all trying to achieve. But it gets blurred over with this whole male-female thing where nobody wants to look at the fact that we are very, very different biologically. And that doesn't mean I don't have feminine qualities. I have compassion, I have empathy, I have sensitivity, I have emotions, and so forth. But I process it completely differently, and I need to if I'm going to keep my testosterone up, and vice versa for women. They're shutting down to their femininity, and the symptom of that is so much. 1 out of 4 women today are on antidepressants. That's like, what is going on? That means they're really unhappy. Imagine a guy coming home trying to feel like he's successful and making her happy, and she's on an antidepressant. How can that work? He'll become depressed just living with her, and that's really, really hard for him, and it's hard for her too. Why is she so depressed? Well, feminists would say, it's the work world is all male-oriented, and there's certain truth to that, which is the work world's not against women, but it's the work world. It's male-oriented. It's testosterone-producing. It's called put your personal needs behind you, go out there and serve the public, get something done, make decisions, take risks, work for money, make sacrifices, be kind to people you don't even want to know, but be nice. All that stuff you do in the workplace is putting your personal stuff to the side, which men are great at if they can be trained at that. But because it stimulates testosterone. But for women, when testosterone goes up, estrogen goes down, they lose their ability to get pregnant, they lose their ability to be happy, their hormones go out of balance, their stress levels soar, it depletes them of serotonin, and now they're depressed. And this is what's happening today. And we got to look at the problem from the side of psychology, but now the last 15 years, my main focus has been supporting the psychological principles I developed so many years ago with the nutritional principles. Because the environmental toxicity and the depletion of minerals in our soil, the lack of nutrition in our food, the GMOs, this is just wiping out people's gut, wiping out their brain, wiping out their ability to maintain positive mood, to feel energetic. We got all these people gaining weight. So easy to get back to your normal weight. Weight is normal. And yet in our country, everybody's overweight, or they're underweight, or they're addicted to drugs. All these imbalances are happening all around us. And there are such basic solutions for it. And that's why I'm excited to be on your show, because you combine psychology with nutrition. You got to be holistic. It doesn't work just one piece of the pie.
Absolutely. I'm so excited about everything you shared, because what you're doing, everything you just shared is laying the groundwork for where we're going to go. You just laid the complete trajectory for everything that we're going to go into. And we are absolutely going to go into the hormonal differences between men and women, and we are going to go into the neurological and cognitive health, because I know that's a huge area that you focus on and I focus on. Those 2 areas in particular are actually some of my primary focuses. So that's going to be a really great area to go into. Before we do, though, I have to bring this up and see what your perspective on it is. Now, you've already kind of touched on this, but I want to maybe come at it from a different angle. Have you seen a documentary called Misrepresentation?
No.
Okay, so my friend Layla, she's my roommate. She's like this world famous photographer and also human rights activist. And she told me, "Look, you got to watch this movie." And it's basically what it is it's about how women mainly are misrepresented in our culture. And it doesn't come from a strong feminist perspective. It actually just lets you know like exactly what's going on and how this image of women, the feminine, is actually damaging both women and also damaging men, and how it's disturbing our brain development and just our perspective on what a woman is. So I would love to just kind of dive into maybe what I'm trying to get at is The fundamental dynamics of the masculine and feminine archetype. Again, you kind of touched on this before, but I want to go into this direction of that. Culturally, we have been sold a program from many different areas of what the man and female archetype or the masculine feminine archetype is. And, it's hard for me to formulate an exact question, but if you kind of catch my drift, I'd like to dive a little deeper into that.
Well, I'm happy to talk about that subject. I don't know what the movie's about. I got a taste of it just now, but let me give you some of my insight on this, because, of course, I've been dealing with this 35 years of my life. That's the whole basic major focus of my work. And probably have given more talks on this subject than any person in the history of mankind, and to more people, all around the world. Millions and millions of people I've talked to and get responses from signing books and what do they think and what do they hear. That doesn't mean everybody loves my ideas. I'm always surprised at people who don't. But clearly I'm a controversial figure for some people. But I've certainly touched the lives of so many. And so when we come to one of the concepts that's a bit extreme that I completely disagree with, which I feel is completely misrepresenting both men and women, is the idea that gender is a social construct. Okay, so this is the current sort of war cry of feminists, which is that gender doesn't exist and that it is a social construct. It's a bunch of ideas society has said that, well, you're a guy, and if you have a penis, you're this, and if you don't, you're that, and you should do this, and you should do that. Now, where I completely agree, our meeting point is I completely see that gender, that is the male and female, is gender rules are created by society. They are a social construct. Ideas like women should stay home and be with the children. Mm-hmm. The idea is that women cannot be effective in the workplace. And the idea that women cannot fly a fighter plane. The idea that women are not good at mathematics. The idea that men don't make good mothers, primary parents, nurturers. The idea that, men don't care about relationships. The idea that men can't make emotional commitment, and that they're always going to cheat on you. The idea that men are cheaters more than women. These are all social constructs. Okay, these are limitations, and if we want to look at they were actually created by people's experience at a time which is not now. It was a time where society supported men to be more masculine, and society supported women to be more feminine. So simply put, if you go to the Amazon or Africa or villages in India or villages in China, I've been to all those places, what you'll see is these very traditional values where there's a social rule that men should be a certain way, women should be a certain way. So let me take one of those areas, a trip I made to the Ashwar Indians in Ecuador, South America. So I take a private plane. It lands on a dirt runway in the middle of the Amazon. I go several hours in a canoe. I get on a trail that goes 5 hours through the jungle to get to a village. Okay, so this is they don't speak English. You don't see white people there. This is a very, very primitive place. There's no radios, nothing. And so you look at how do people live. You'll see how people have lived on this planet for the longest time. And that is the women take care of the children, the women garden, the women are not allowed in the forest, not because they want to go into the forest, but because the forest is dangerous. Men go into the forest. Men go to hunt in the forest. Men die in the forest from snake bites. That's the dangerous work. Also, villages can be attacked. Basically, when one of the villages I went to, the chief showed me 7 shrunken heads. And I said, well, what's that about? And they said that when they have a child, they have to go to a neighboring village and kill somebody because they know that the forest can only sustain enough food for the people they have. So that's their way of being sustainable. Now, they've sort of reformed from that, so I felt very safe. But And also, I wasn't someone who's going to take away the food in their forest. But, these are like primitive situations, but this is where culture came from. Men and women have specific roles that would allow them to survive as a partnership. Today, what's different is men and women are no longer looking to have specific roles to survive. We're not living in a level of survival. When you rise up out of the level of survival and security, you get to a level of personal achievement and intimacy, which you can combine that into personal fulfillment. So men and women are coming together today in intimacy for personal fulfillment, not to survive. So once we left that level of survival, then suddenly we are free to access all the parts of who we are. Because culture constrained men to be the bread maker, to do the difficult jobs, to go into the jungle, to survive the cold and the heat, to do the tough stuff, to do the dangerous stuff. And women were basically protected because they took care of the children and they did the jobs that were safe and never pressured, not dangerous. So those are our two worlds. And so that culture supported men in being that and supported women in being the other, more nurturing. So let's say you're out there standing guard, you're going to have to kill somebody. You can't be this nurturing guy who cares about people's feelings and family if you're going to kill somebody. So you've got to have faster reaction time, the high testosterone that all men have today, at least 10 times more than all women your man will have. If he's somewhat healthy. And of course, when it drops below that, he becomes very unhealthy. Women are supposed to have at least 10 times more estrogen than your average man. And when that drops, they become very unhappy and unhealthy. And even when women do have what's called estrogen dominance, they still would have low estrogen, but just they have more estrogen than progesterone, so they have an imbalance there, and that causes big problems for women. So our hormones are very, very important. We have to respect that, and when women are becoming too masculine, doing behaviors that stimulate testosterone, it does lower their estrogen. It does raise their stress. Tests have shown this, that women in the workplace have stress levels twice as high as men's on average. And when they return home, their stress levels tend to be 4 times higher than your average man. And so what's happening there is, this is women adjusting themselves to this modern world. They haven't figured it out yet. That's why I have my message, which is you as a woman can be in a very testosterone job, but you have to make sure you're balancing it by anticipating a very estrogen-oriented relationship when you get home. So instinctively, women have got this right. They just don't know how to make it happen. They wait for men to make it happen. Women do have a greater need for romance, at least in the first 6 years of a relationship until they give up. That romance, the anticipation of being in love, the anticipation of affection and warmth and intimacy and romance is a major, major estrogen and oxytocin producer, the two hormones that are essential for women to regulate stress. And if a woman doesn't have that high stimulation of romance and good communication, that's another one. If you go to the Ashwar Indians, the women could care less about talking to men. They don't complain, gee, we have communication problems. It's not even thought of. And they don't mind the fact that men, when they come home from their work in the forest, the men just sit around and drink. That's what they do. The women even provide. The women, you divide the tent, the big house that they all come and meet. It's a big roof. And they're all there. It's split in half, and women are on one side behind a wall, and men can't go there, but women can go into the man's place to serve alcohol. And so they go in there, and the alcohol they serve is actually something called chicha, which women dig up these roots and chew it up and then spit it into a bowl and put it over a fire as it starts to ferment, and then it eventually it ferments, and they serve it to the men as like a beer. It tastes terrible, but that's what women do. I mean, they just want to keep the men sedated, basically. They do their job. Women are in their world, and at night they will do their sexual thing out in the jungle. There's a little activity like that if they're with a man, and so they feel safe.
Wow, that's really, really an incredible explanation. there's a number of things that come up for me, but I will bypass those for the moment. And I want to go deeper into the hormonal differences between men and women and how this influences how we all show up in the world, because that's a huge cornerstone of my work as a nutrition specialist, is the hormone picture. I mean, I just gave a 4-hour lecture the other day here in Kauai on hormones and tonic herbalism. And it's like pretty much my whole focus hormonally is, with the environmentals, estrogens, with liver congestion, the inability to methylate, and then the aromatization, the conversion of our quote unquote good hormones into like steroidal, estrogens essentially. So, let's really kind of like dive into that and just go in any direction you feel inspired to share about the hormonal differences and how we can start adjusting our life to come back into balance with one another.
I'm happy to move into that area. I just, I want to take a few more minutes with the misrepresentation of women.
Oh, please, absolutely.
Here's some more details on that. There's you hear in the political speeches all the time about the pay gap between men and women. Mm. Okay, and so we believe what we hear on TV quite often. I certainly don't, but most people do, because they don't actually go and study the facts. When it comes to the pay gap between men and women, there is a huge pay gap in terms of the lowest paying jobs. Mothers will usually take out of desperation because they have to do whatever it takes to feed those babies. So there's no doubt that the lowest paying jobs are mainly populated by women. But there's absolutely no truth to the fact that when women and men do the same job in the same amount of time, that men make significantly more than women. This is nonsense. There's no study that backs that up. And just think about your own experience. I'm a business owner, and the women make just as much as the men. And the irony is, when you say women are misrepresented, they were in the past. It did happen, and certainly in India, they completely are. But in America, it didn't take long for business owners to realize what amazing workers women are. And ultimately, if women really were paid half what men get, then businesses would only hire women because you can get them for half the amount.
Right.
So suddenly you'd have to be putting men out of work, and we'd be talking about all the poor men who get put out of work because women are undercutting them, just like we're saying with shipping jobs out of the country. We're shipping jobs to women because every business guy knows how amazingly competent women are. Mm-hmm. There's no question about that. There was question in the 50s, there was like, can women do these jobs? And then we figured out, yeah. And so women got lots of jobs. So here's this government statistics on this. When they compare same job for same amount of hours, the actual tests say same job for the hours of 30 to 60 hours a week. And in that, men over 35 will be making more than women, because typically men over 35 will take longer, will be those in that category working 60 hours a week, and women who are mothers will typically be in the category of 30 to 40 hours a week, because they're going to want to get home to their kids. And not that men don't want to get home to their kids, but if you're a married man with children, you've got a wife who's generally home with the kids. So men have that tendency to work longer hours. So that's the first thing. But then you actually look at what the statistics say besides that imbalance and what they're reporting. Even with that imbalance, it shows that women actually, if you look at one category of women who are 35 years and under who have no children compared to men who are 35 years and under who have no children. And that's our, the future right there. That's the people growing into, based upon all the changes we've made in our consciousness here, that women make 20% more than men for the same work for the same amount of time. That's the statistics. That's the government statistics. You don't hear that because you're not going to get a crowd-raising excitement when you say, we need equality. Men are getting less money than women, because nobody sees that. Because over 35, yes, that's the group that's the old-fashioned. But if we look at what's happening in the world today at the private universities, Harvard, Stanford, all the highly significant universities, which are harder to get into, there's an equal number of men and women going into the universities, but twice as many women graduate from the universities. So think about this. 2 women to every man are now graduating from colleges. This is a huge crisis. I mean, this is a big-time problem. And, now we can go to some of the causes of the big-time problem. Now, one of the books I'm working on is all the different problems and the crisis of the boy crisis is what's happening to our boys. Not to say that girls don't have a crisis, too. I mean, girls are, they're unhappy, as we've already talked. They're on antidepressants, where you'll get like twice as many females on antidepressants or more, actually 4 or 5 times more. What you'll get with the ADD type symptoms, attention deficit symptoms, learning difficulty symptoms. If you look at autism symptoms, we got 1 out of 50 boys in America with autistic spectrum disorder, and in California, 1 out of 20. And that's basically 5 times more than with girls. So there's something happening here to the males in our population that is not healthy at all. We have to start understanding this, that yes, feminism addressed a real crisis for women, where women were undervalued in the workplace, with no question about that. That's really not the case today. Certainly there's places where that is true, but the majority of men truly appreciate women in the workplace. Women don't always feel appreciated in the workplace. We did a survey of many questions. One of my books is in the workplace, and one of the questions is, are women appreciated in the workplace? And 60% of women said no, and 95% of men said yes. So these men, and from their mind, they're appreciating women, and who's to determine if you're being appreciated? I mean, I appreciate all the women I work with. Now, whether they feel appreciated is a different story, but from the male point of view, they're not like thinking women are incompetent. There's all kinds of reasons why. I explore that in that book. One reason why that women don't feel valued and appreciated is they don't feel seen or heard, or their efforts are not being recognized. It's you can say to a man, go do this job, and say, great job, here, I'll pay you, and a guy will feel appreciated. You say to a woman, here's this job, go do it, and she says, okay, here's the result. You say, great job, and pay her for it. She doesn't feel as appreciated as a man, because she wants you to know that she had to stay up late, and she had this frustration, and she had this disappointment, and she had to do this, and then she had to go home and take care of her kids, but she still produced that result. So women have a different need in order to feel valued and appreciated, and that's something men don't know about. I call that a blind spot. And men can make the workplace a more fulfilling place for women by understanding how to more effectively communicate that you appreciate her. And women can learn to more effectively interpret men's behavior and not take it so personally. Men don't complain we don't feel appreciated, because men know men are not good at appreciating each other. We are competing with each other. If I tell everybody, how great you are, then I may not get the job. So men, typically, the traditional male, isn't very good at valuing and appreciating other people. That's why we're drawn to women, is that women have an enormous capacity to value and appreciate others. And so, these are our recognition of a difference. Now, where would that difference come from? We'll just focus on that one. It's hormones. We'll get into hormones now, which is when you have higher estrogen levels, that women, when they're healthy, have at least 10 times, if not way more, estrogen than your average healthy male. And with this higher estrogen, what it means is the psychological component of estrogen is I depend on you. I need you. I want you in my life. I depend on you. I need you. So that's it. When women have their highest estrogen levels, which is at their time of fertility, ironically, the brain makes less serotonin to make her need you a little bit more to motivate her in order to go have sex with some guy and have a baby. This is the biological, imperative. We make the biology makes sex very fulfilling, and at certain times of the month makes it even more fulfilling for women and puts them into a mode of being more interested in it. Just simply, you can see that as estrogen goes up, her need to be filled up, in a sense, to be touched, to be seen, to be heard, to be penetrated, basically, is much greater at that time. And that has to do with estrogen. So estrogen is that feeling of dependence. I need you. I depend on you. Testosterone is just the opposite. Testosterone is, I don't need anybody. I can do it myself. Look what I can do. You can see it in all little boys even. But particularly after puberty, it's like, I don't need your help. I can do it myself. See what I can do. See what I've accomplished. And women always call that, quote, the male ego, as if something's wrong with it. But really, it's just normal. The female ego is, I need you. Why aren't you here? And the man's ego is, look what I've done. Look what I can accomplish. So these are not things we should judge. These are things we should that we should respect and appreciate. I mean, because what comes along when a woman feels her need for something, her ability to appreciate getting what she needs is much greater. I mean, imagine, you're hungry, you're feeling I need food, and somebody gives you food, you're really grateful for it. If you don't feel your need for hunger and you serve someone food, it's kind of like, okay, that's nice, tastes good, but it's not that important to you. When I'm working really hard on a book or something, I'm really in my full testosterone mode, the estrogen's going down, I don't even feel hunger. And so my wife says, you've got to eat. And I say, okay, I'll eat. And she'll serve me a meal. And okay, that was nice. And she's like, well, you didn't enjoy my meal. It's because it's hard for her to understand, because she's going to have a much greater awareness of what she needs. And when you have that awareness of what you need, then you appreciate others much, much more. You appreciate the things in life much, much more. My wife's ability to be happy is amazing. She can be so delighted by little things. Now, when I'm over on my female side, I too can do that. That's really quite delightful. But I have to be careful as a man not to become too dependent on others for my happiness. This is what's happening to men today. They fall in love with women. They go way into their estrogen side, and she makes me so happy. And boom, the day that she doesn't make you happy because she's ignoring you, or she's in a mood, or she's disapproving of you, we men, if we're on our female side, they go ballistic. They become all emotional about it. They pout about it. They get mad about it. They complain about it. They got a list of complaints about their wife. They resent. Oh my God, it's just awful. And I have to tell men, get back to your male side. You're whining and complaining. Get off of it. And I would never say that to a woman. You see, it's like, this is where you got to understand the difference is what a man needs to do is not indulge in his female when he's experiencing stress. He needs to come back to his male, because it's the male hormones that lower stress for men. And these are like very important key issues as testosterone gets produced when you basically back off from depending on someone for your fulfillment or for your success. You look to yourself. Now, does that mean you're an island? No, you find balance. So I'm responsible for my life. I'm responsible for my fulfillment. And I also have needs for love and affection and connection and my wife's wisdom and her support. These are like big things to me. But see, the reason I understand this stuff so much is that for 9 years I was a celibate monk. I didn't depend on women for anything. I ate a cup of food a day. I didn't depend on food for my happiness. I slept on the floor without a pillow. Why? Because I didn't want to have to depend on a bed for happiness. And when you do that, I'm not recommending that to anybody. I'm kind of a fanatic, and now I'm kind of a fanatic moderate. But in those days, I was just completely going to find my male side. I didn't have that knowledge of what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to find happiness from within. So the way you do it is you take away all sources of happiness from outside. It emerges from inside if you have a spiritual practice. So, I used to do my spiritual practice every year, longer and longer and longer. After about 9 years, I was doing 12 to 15 hours of meditation a day because my meditation was the source of great fulfillment. Now in my life, my work is this great source of fulfillment. Then I bring that fulfillment home to my relationship. I do not look to my wife for my fulfillment. I look to my wife for greater fulfillment. I'm the foundation of it. I know how to make myself happy. Now I share myself in service and love to my wife, and I become much happier. But on days when whatever my best is not enough for her, because some days she's just not going to be in a good mood or something, and she's busy worrying about something, and she's not happy to see me, and she doesn't need me, and her estrogen levels are down, her progesterone levels are up. It's a natural cycle that women go through where they shift from feeling dependent on you to make them happy to feeling more independent, and then they go back to that. Their hormones are always balancing. They're never the same. When she's in estrogen mode, she's more estrogen. She's going to be needing you more. She has the potential to be happy with you, but she also has the potential to be unhappy with you. It goes both ways. Because if you need someone, you're very happy when you get it. And if you need someone and you don't get what you need, then you're not that thrilled. But then naturally, after fertility, her cycle shifts. Now she's going to go towards having her period. The estrogen levels start to drop, and her progesterone levels start to increase. And that's where she starts to feel more independent. And progesterone is amazing for lowering her stress levels. But let's say that she didn't get what she needed when the estrogen is up. Then suddenly she's going to be feeling resentful that she didn't get that, and that then inhibits her progesterone production. And then if she's out there in the world being independent, she's now in testosterone land. That adds a whole new thing to women's cycle, which is by being at work during the day, doing the types of behaviors that we talked about before that stimulate testosterone. Even though women are not testosterone, they don't need as much as men. They still need testosterone. They become depleted in testosterone in the work world. And so they have this need to do what men do, which is to take me time. You see, before Men Are From Mars, it was a huge complaint that women had. Now, this idea has gone through the world quite a bit, that men need their cave time, He's in his cave, Well, that was a radical idea back in those days. And basically, I learned that idea and then promoted it from the American Indians. There's a saying in one American tribe that I was working with, and a woman I was working with her, and I was explaining that when her husband doesn't want to talk, it's good to leave him alone, because anything he says when his stress level's up is going to be more prickly. Now, why is that? And this is still true, but hormonally so, is that when men are upset, emotional, then their testosterone levels have converted to estrogen through aromatase, which you talked about earlier. So that makes men grumpy and irritable and inflexible and pouting and whatever. Whenever a man is doing that, basically I said, just leave him alone. He needs to be all by himself. Do not interact with him. Because when men are alone and quiet, their testosterone levels go back up. Talking lowers your testosterone. Talking about feelings. If you're talking to solve problems, your testosterone level is going to surge. But if you're using emotions to solve a problem, which is like when men become angry and grizzly and like monkeys, growl, they make a big scene to show dominance. Actually, what they're doing is their testosterone levels are rising and continue converting into estrogen. Yeah. And that's what anger is. When men are angry, they have to understand that they're losing their masculine power by being angry. They will never earn the respect of women, particularly, because women need to feel safe, and you can't feel safe in the presence of an angry guy. It's scary. Throughout history, men have... when men get angry, people die. So if you want to build trust, and that's what we're looking for in relationships today, we're not looking for the trust that my partner can help me to survive. We're looking for the trust. Women are looking for to be able to trust that I can be myself, and my partner's not going to hurt me, ridicule me, minimize me, reject me, and leave me. This is the bottom line for women. And it's always been the bottom line for women is depending on men. Today, women depend on men to support women and expressing more of who they are, which means if she wants to work, you support her in working. If she doesn't want to work, you support her in not wanting to work her. If she's happy to see you, of course you're happy to have that. But if she's not happy, you support her in that. Support her in all of her states of being, and ultimately each time you do that, her stress levels will go down, and what you get is this woman who appreciates and loves you even more. And men don't understand this. Once you understand the science of women, then suddenly nothing women do can really upset you, because you have the power to transform them. And this is pure masculine power, which is to know what can you do, what can't you do. And when you know what you can do, then you do it and you feel confident. And there's certain things you can't do. For example, if my wife's upset, I can't make her feel better. She's like the weather, but what I can do is not make it worse. And that's what men tend to do, is they make it worse rather than putting on an umbrella. And we just don't have the skills to facilitate her and finding her power once again to find happiness. But those are some examples of how the hormones interplay with our psychology, which you don't find written anywhere. This is because as I began studying all the hormones and all the gender differences when it comes to that, I was already well versed for 20 years in how men and women think and feel differently. So suddenly it all just fit together into a beautiful puzzle piece that makes sense of everything.
Absolutely. Wow. So many incredible nuggets of wisdom and insight. Really, like, the insightfulness that you just shared is incredible. I'm a 30-year-old male, clearly, right? So I've had my own experiences and dynamics with the opposite sex and relationships and the ups and downs that inevitably will happen in that arena. And the insights that I'm getting from you are so spot on, and it's putting together some of those puzzle pieces. It's just kind of like those little aha moments of like, oh, got it. That's what's going on. One area that you mentioned that I took a little bit of a magnifying, or I should say I will be putting more of a magnifying glass on. Now, obviously, I already brought it up about like the aromatization, that hormone conversion process, but my perspective was more focused on, the environmental toxicity factor, and also like when our cortisol raises and our fight or flight hormone kicks in, then obviously we know that's part of that process too. But I guess it's just the way you phrased it, is when a man is angry, when he's feeling like, I guess the way that I would interpret that in my own experience is when I feel like I'm being judged, when I feel like I'm not able to articulate or express a thought, like the emotion overrides my ability to actually communicate, or I'm not being understood, then I get that stress response. And I didn't ever really make that connection that potentially the reason a woman is being turned off, you mentioned the obviousness, like it's not necessarily a safe space that I'm creating, but then also it's like, wow, I'm potentiating estrogen in my body, and maybe chemically that's sending off an unattractive signal.
Well said. That's definitely putting out an unattractive signal. And women, see, it's the confusion. Is that, think about women's plight? Okay, they realize they're ready to shift. Their consciousness expands. They're going to go over to their male side, and they need something to bring them back to their female. Mm-hmm. Now, the truth is, there's two things that help women come back. Well, three things, but the first two things are to help women come back to their feminine side is hanging out with other women.
Right.
Particularly in a non-work setting. So, when women can get together and they just start talking, they find all these things to talk about, and maybe from the male perspective, if you listen in, you might think, oh, they're just a bunch of women complaining about life, but they're also celebrating life. There's two sides of it. And so they'll sit together and they'll talk and they'll talk and they'll talk, and they're feeling a kind of an empathy for each other, and that then stimulates these female hormones of estrogen and oxytocin. A part of the estrogen that goes up just being with other women is resonance. They say that when women are living in the same house, suddenly their periods will all go into harmony and so forth. And there's another side of it where estrogen is dependence, and you feel like you can always depend on somebody who thinks like you. Mm. You can depend upon them to go, yeah, I know, I'm right there with you. So instantly when women are with other women, their estrogen levels are going to go up, and their oxytocin levels will go up as well, as they sort of interact, supporting each other. And that's a very feminine, tribal thing. That's how women got their estrogen, oxytocin for millions of years. That's what they do. Animal kingdom, that's what they do. So it's the basic female thing to come back to femininity is hang out with a bunch of women and do women things. Okay, that's one. So because that's the most familiar, when women are on their male side, they're coming home, but there's no tribe of women. There's just this guy there. So the thought is, if I could make him like a woman, then suddenly, we're going to feel more feminine. I'm going to be able to come back to my feminine. But that's not what happens. When men become more feminine, women become more masculine. See, there's a magnetism between men and women. Opposites attract and opposites repel. So if I'm a man now, and we're in a chemistry, we have a sexual chemistry. It's different with all those women. When you're with the women, you don't have the sexual chemistry. It's a different kind of connectedness. With a man, you marry this guy because there's a sexual chemistry, and that's one of the biological motivations in our modern relationships is people go, well, I really like the guy, but I don't have any sexual chemistry. And the guy could say, she's really beautiful, but I don't have any sexual chemistry. So there's the dynamic of sexual chemistry is this really important thing for us today. And part of it is again, we're looking for this emotional fulfillment, and you can have more sexual chemistry when there's emotional fulfillment. So having said that, you've got a male and a female who have this magnetic attraction, and so she comes home masculine, actually makes him more feminine, or he comes home or he's out of work and he's more feminine, it makes her more masculine. And if she comes home and she wants him, she's got this attitude that goes, oh, I wanted to be a girlfriend, so tell me about your day. Let's talk about it. Let's chat about it. Let's complain about it. So as soon as he starts to talk about his feelings and talk about the female side of him, which may be conscious or may not be conscious, but most of us guys today, your generation for sure, you're very conscious of all the feelings inside. They're going on inside. And she says, well, tell me all the feelings. You start to talk about your feelings, your estrogen levels are going to start increasing. Yeah. Guess what happens in her? When she listens to that, instead of becoming more girl-like, she becomes more masculine. Her testosterone actually comes up. And this is was such a clear revelation in my work, is that when you're in the role of listening, just quiet, your testosterone levels will go up. See, that's what I did as a monk. I was just listening all the time to what goes on inside. This whole movement now of mindfulness and being present. What's that about? It's being quiet, you see, because for thousands and millions of years, men have always dealt with stress by becoming quiet. You'll see them in the Amazon. You see them in India. Meditation was taught to quiet the mind. Women never did that. It was never taught to women. It wasn't a sexist thing. Women were taught just to love their family and take care of them. That's what their trip to enlightenment was, devotion. Whereas men particularly, there was devotional paths for men too, but primarily it was quiet meditation, and you quiet the mind. And when you do that, if you're a man, it rebuilds your testosterone. When you do it with a woman, it also rebuilds your testosterone, but it's very hard for women to quiet their mind if they haven't already built up their estrogen and oxytocin and lowered their stress. So men quiet their mind in order to lower stress, which is, in simple terms, guys say, I'll just forget it. I don't want to worry about it. I don't want to talk about it. It's no big deal to me. And, of course, you say that to a therapist, they go, oh, you're in denial. You have to talk all about it and share your feelings. And actually what he needs to do at times when he's feeling stressed is to quiet the mind and then or do something that will raise his testosterone. That's always the dynamic that will lower stress for men, is knowing what are the things that you can do that make you feel really good, that have nothing to do with depending on others. Okay, so something you do yourself. And, for me, my work, I can just do my work, which is so fulfilling. It's a blend of masculine and feminine. But if I want to just build up my masculine, I meditate. Okay, I just quiet my mind. And you do it. And what men have to know that are not master, I'm a master meditator. I sit for hours and hours, and it's ecstasy for me. But clearly, in the beginning, it wasn't, and it's not in the beginning. For the first many years of meditation, you're going to sit there, and it's going to be boring as hell. And it takes a lot of willpower to stay doing whatever your meditation practice is. And, the idea is supposed to be blissful or whatever is nonsense until you become a master of it. So it's like anything, like my work is, blissful for me because I've mastered my work. I've spent 40 years doing this. It's a channel. But it was the foundation of that was a meditation technique where you sit there and you do something that's absolutely boring, but you do it. And that's using pure willpower. So you're not depending on some sugar to make you do something. You're depending on your own willpower to do it. So that's really important for meditators and spiritual people to realize is they say, oh, I'm too bored to do it. Now, that's for men. Now, for women, what I suggest is a whole different biological response. Meditation is a quietness to rebuild your testosterone. women do not, generally speaking, have the capacity to shift from being stressed to calming their mind. Their mind actually becomes under moderate stress, not big stress, just moderate stress. Their activity in their brain is 8 times greater than a man's. So you're really pushing it, and you're making it very difficult for her. So what, generally speaking, if a woman's going to meditate, she needs a good massage beforehand. She needs to have the day off. She needs to feel that she's pampering herself, and she's getting a lot of estrogen stimulating behaviors where she's depending on someone to do something for her, and which is what romance is, which is what getaways are, which is what spas are. People are tending to you and doing things for you, and then you feel nurtured. You're receiving. Your oxytocin goes up. Your estrogen is up. Then your stress goes down. Now you can sit and meditate, and it's quite a beautiful thing. It's now you're going to quiet the mind and be able to rebuild your testosterone levels, because women today, the more modern women they are, the more stressed they are doing traditional male things. They need help to get back to the female, and then they can rebuild their masculine. So they're getting a deprivation of female, and they don't have the ability to restore the masculine hormone either. So they also will start running low in testosterone and lose their sex drive. Now, what's interesting, and I want to say this for everybody to know, is that you can be low in testosterone, and it doesn't mean you don't have a sex drive. It means you don't have a sex drive to the person you love.
Oh, wow.
The more you have low testosterone, you can't get turned on to the people you love, but you can get turned on to people you don't know or who don't love you. Now, the biology of that is very simple, is that when I have sex with my wife, I'm not just having testosterone, which creates desire for sex. I'm also experiencing my love for her, which is oxytocin. I'm also experiencing the fact she's my partner in life, and I depend on her for her love. I'm attached to her. So I get estrogen when I'm around her. So just even thinking of my wife, my estrogen levels are going to go up, my oxytocin levels are going to go up a little bit, my testosterone is going to come down. And this is measurable that when men get married, their testosterone levels drop dramatically. When they have children, they drop again. So this is natural. It doesn't mean I have low testosterone. It means I just don't have this super high testosterone that a single guy is going to have, which is making us think about sex all the time. I don't think about sex all the time. If I see my wife naked, I think about sex for sure. There's no doubt. She can't even undress in the same bedroom as me. She's got to go in the closet. We have a big closet, but she'll go in there to dress because she knows that all she has to do is show anything. I'm 64 years old. I'm ready to jump. It's quite amazing to have healthy testosterone levels as you get older. But she's 2 years older than me. So she's 66 years old and fantastically sexual being for me. Maybe not for other people, but we have our bond that we've established. I'm bonded to her. But I have healthy testosterone levels. If I didn't have healthy testosterone levels, let's say they were a little bit lower, maybe a third of what they should be, and then I'm married, now I love my wife, so now there's more estrogen in my body, and I'm enjoying my time with her. We're spending some wonderful time together. That's oxytocin producing. That's going to push my testosterone levels down even more. What happens now is I can't be interested in sex. But if I look online to pornography, here's a woman who's naked who says, I'm ready to have sex with you, which is always a big testosterone booster, and there's no estrogen being produced because I don't care about her, and I don't know her, and I don't really get any real love from her. It's all fake, and it's digital, and digital also stimulates more dopamine. So you suddenly now have this dopamine stimulator that stimulates testosterone, and you don't have any of the other factors like prolactin and like estrogen and like oxytocin that would keep your testosterone from going too high. So with this person I don't know, then suddenly my testosterone levels soar temporarily with that person. Generally, once I've been with them, I'm not interested again, which is typically what they say about porn users, is they never go back. Pretty much the same thing with most prostitutes. They say that, a guy will come to them and not come back. They want to just keep moving on, because if you actually form a relationship with them and you know them, you can't get turned on. And that inability to get turned on is one of the reasons you went to them in the first place, because you can't get turned on to love. And this is what's happening to our younger generation today. Many guys just can't sustain sexual interest in their partner after a few years, and then they just go on. And because we all want to have sex, we want to feel that feeling, but it's because they've been exposed to so much porn. It's just there. It's like a cocaine, and literally it affects the same part of the brain as heroin. Yeah. It's an addiction, and it's just as heroin prevents you from being able to enjoy life. The addiction of pornography online prevents you from being able to enjoy lasting sexual attraction with your partner.
Wow. Yeah. Jeez. So much there. Actually, gosh, there's two directions I really want to go with you, and I'm hoping that we can weave this together in the last 30 minutes we have together. But you're talking about, from the male perspective, of this elevation of estrogen, which is totally in the context that you're sharing, in the context of bonding with a woman, and the increase in estrogen that comes from actually caring about this person and wanting this person in my life. Like, right? That seems like kind of a natural thing. But as you pointed out, in our culture, we have an immediate gratification type of culture. So anyways, as a man, one of the things I wanted to bring up with you is that what I've noticed is there sometimes is this dichotomy that comes up where I'm a man on a mission, like I am 100% self-centered. I'm centered in my mission. That's my rudder. That's my anchor. That's why I'm on the planet. And I also desire to have, female companionship from time to time and eventually a relationship. And I found that it can be a difficult balance, and I feel like it may, and just clarify for me, I feel like that balance to that elevation of estrogen that you would experience in a relationship can be balanced by being on your mission as a man.
That is so perfectly expressed. I love what you just said. It's the chapter 1 of my most recent book called Conscious Men, Mastering the Man Code. And it's for men to understand themselves and for women to understand conscious men. These are the guys like you who are clear, I got a mission. And you're in the right track. You need to have your mission as the primary source of fulfillment. That's what you need more than a woman. What you want is you want a woman, but what you need is your mission. And for women particularly, what they want is to achieve success in the world. But what they need is an intimate relationship. There you get the dynamic of difference between men and women. If we look at wanting as testosterone and we look at needing as estrogen, then basically your need, your estrogen, basically your need is fulfilled through your action, and that's testosterone. So that makes sure that you never become needy. Then when you go into a relationship, you strongly want that woman, that sexual desire. So you want to be with her, you want her to respond to you, you want her to be happy with you, and ultimately you want to make a difference in her life as well. But your need, your primary source of fulfillment is your mission and your purpose. That is the secret. Because if you're like a guy who's like, I don't really have a job, I don't have really a mission and purpose, I don't have a passion in life, I just want women, my passion is women, and I want to be with a woman, and I want sex, and that's my passion and fulfillment is being with this woman. And some men are this way, they're really hot and cold. I explain to women, these guys come on super fast and they do everything for you. They all disappear because they can't sustain it, and they get really pouty and upset and resentful. They have long lists of complaints before they leave the relationship because they feel like they give and they don't get back. Well, it's because they're looking to the woman as their primary source of fulfillment. For me, my wife can be unhappy, and she can, the way I describe it to men is that women will go on and on about, like, what was it recently? My wife made a meal for me, and I was just, watching the news and eating it, and she says, well, you didn't even say thank you for the meal. Did you enjoy it? Did you like it? And I said, of course, I loved it, but she was like, for a temporary moment, rather upset. Now, if I was an unconscious guy, or a conscious guy who hasn't learned to balance my masculine with my feminine would immediately connect with, she's disappointed with me, And if I'm needy, then why are you saying that? I worked really hard today. I do this for you. And you get these really petty arguments that men get into.
Mm-hmm.
Women complain about something. Women disapprove of something. Women get a little upset about something. And then men get equally upset back. That's going to happen to conscious men, and they have to become aware that that happens more to them because they're more in touch with their female side, which is the limbic system part of the brain, which has mirror cells. So if you're unhappy with me, well, then I'm unhappy with you. I was happy before now, but if you're going to be upset with me, then I'll be upset with you, which is, if you back up and you go, this is really stupid. If she's upset with you, what can you do to make it better? And what you can do to make it better is don't get upset with her. That's it. So what that means is you got to tuck your female side away and you elevate it to a place. It takes a while to do this, but you get to this place where you feel compassion. Compassion is the ultimate masculine force. This is in Tibetan Buddhism. I remember in studying that, they always talked about the enlightened Buddha was compassion and the enlightened female Buddha was wisdom. And that was a challenging thought for me, but absolutely it's true. Is that my wife now has so much wisdom, and she has these irrational emotional reactions. That's why men think, how can women be sources of wisdom? Bringing you back to when you first talked about the misrepresentation of women in the workplace particularly, is because men see women having these reactions, emotional reactions, which are often irrational reactions. They're just temporary. They're fleeting. They leave very quickly. And she just has a strong emotional reaction. And you look biologically in women, you'll see that there's way, way more reaction that goes on under moderate stress. There's 8 times more blood flow in a woman's brain to the emotional part of the brain, because that then stimulates her to talk about what she's feeling. And when she talks about what she's feeling, that raises her estrogen up and allows her to receive, if somebody listens to her, allows her to receive oxytocin stimulation that regulates her stress. So communication is a major stress reducer for women. It's not a major stress reducer for men. It actually increases men's stress if you talk to somebody you're upset with. And you use your emotions to intimidate, because that's what men do. It's not like we're just sharing our feelings to share feelings if we're upset. It's we typically want someone to change as a result of us expressing our feelings, and that's using emotions as manipulation. And so when men use emotions to get what they want, they become feminized, and it's ugly, and it turns women off as well. But in a world where competition is so great, and most of the purchasers are women, you want to be successful, you need to learn to balance yourself just for financial success, if not for peace of mind for yourself. And of course, the third thing is to have a successful relationship.
Wow.
I'm just wondering, did you read my most recent book, Conscious Men?
I have not read that book.
You're going to love it, because what you just brought up, that's the first chapter. And what I do is I go through all these 12 basic qualities of, and I wrote the book with a friend, Arjuna Arda, I want to give him credit, but we went through 12 basic qualities of conscious men, which are different from unconscious men. It's like, and our challenges are greater because, unconscious men, for example, always had mission and purpose, and it was to earn money to provide for their wives. But your mission and purpose is not just to make a woman happy. Right. It's to make the world a better place. It's to express your inner talents. It's to achieve. It's to accomplish. It's to find your inner muse, and which, by the way, happens when you balance your masculine and feminine. That's the muse. The male writers, the male creative people would always talk about the female muse. That's the female voice that comes forth if he is masculine dominant, but also touched into his female. You actually look at the brain of these really genius prodigies, you'll see that they're different from your average male brain, and that the left anterior parietal lobe, which is typically always bigger on the left side than the right, it's equal size on left and right. For women, it's always bigger on the right and not as big on the left. Mm-hmm. And these are biological realities, and it's not that a woman can't use the left anterior parietal lobe. She uses it. That would be the aspect of us which is, likes race cars and likes to fix toasters and likes technology, likes science, likes mathematics, those kind of things. That's just the preference of that side of the brain. It's called impersonal transactions. Anything which is impersonal is left anterior parietal lobe. Anything which is personal transaction, it's, do you like me? Do I like you? What did you eat for dinner? What are you wearing? What should I wear? What's everybody wearing? These kind of, considerations that are personal. That's the right anterior parietal lobe. And one of the differences between men and women is that the right is always bigger than her left. And for men, the left is always bigger than his right. And then you've got, male geniuses or male prodigies that really stand out. You look at their brains, and what's unique is the left and the right is exactly the same size. And that means they have both the male and female in balance. But they always have terrible lives, unfortunately. You look at the lives of these greats. They were drug addicts, and they commit suicide, and they become alcoholics, and they take speed, and so you go, well, is that what they have to have? And I go, no, they just didn't live in a world that understood that when you have a Ferrari for a brain, that you need better gasoline.
Yeah,
or maybe you need to have an electric engine.
Let's talk about that gasoline.
Yeah, well, the thing is, that's the nutrition that we need. So I wrote a whole book on that called Staying Focused in a Hyper World, Natural Solutions for ADHD, Memory, and Brain Performance. So all the spans from children to young adults to old adults to aging people, you get all these mental problems that are so common today. Divorce being one of those, by the way, and another one, not wanting to make a commitment in a relationship is another one. But let me just highlight to you that waiting till you're in your early 30s to get married is certainly not a problem with the brain. And actually, it's a good brain that does that.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
It really takes biologically 28 to 29 years to fully develop the prefrontal cortex of the brain, so that you could actually be in a relationship and share who you are, as opposed to need someone else to determine who you are. As long as we're dependent on someone to determine who we are, then we're kind of like knocked around by waves. The 20s is a time for us to discover who we are and not depend on others. And then finally, by the time we're about 30, we're able to do that. The brain really doesn't even fully develop until that time in order to have self-reflective consciousness. And historically, in Indian times and so forth, if somebody actually developed that part of the brain, they'd be called enlightened. Today, it's so common we don't call it enlightened because it's not so superior to everybody else. But self-reflective awareness, it does not in any way mean enlightenment, that you have challenges and you have issues and you have problems to overcome. If you get to the place where you have no problems to overcome, then you float off the planet.
Right.
That's the reality. Everybody here has challenges. This is like a school or a gym to work out, to grow in our ability to love and to understand and create compassion. And nobody gets off till everybody gets off is one way of looking at it. We're all in this together. Some of us are older brothers, some are younger, some are wiser, some are needing more help, but we're all in this together. And so this general development is what happens is the kids today are a totally different generation than my generation, and my generation was so different from the previous generation in terms of consciousness. That's why we have all these new challenges. That we have a greater potential, and now we have to achieve that potential. And so we see all these kids with ADD and autistic spectrum disorder. These are just brains that are actually developing faster, and they don't have the right nutrition inside of them. And so we've got three things, which you sort of addressed already. We got environmental toxicity with your GMOs and fertilizers. Fertilizers did it, not fertilizers, but fertilizers are responsible for nutritional deficiency in our food. Once they developed these fertilizers that were just 3 minerals, they no longer had to compost the soil and create a rich microbiome in the soil, which would then give all the nutrients to the plant that our microbiome needs, that our body needs, that our gut needs, that our brain needs, that our body needs. It's just not there. So the minerals are deficient. The ability to utilize minerals is deficient because there's no fulvic acid in the soil, which just basically means the soil is dead soil. Our food comes from dead soil. There's no microorganisms making this fulvic acid, which is what allows our body to have healthy gut. To balance the good bacteria and bad bacteria, we have to have this fulvic acid. We have to have all the minerals necessary. We don't have that in our food today. So one is we're starving for food. That's the first. Second is then they use pesticides, fungicides, and then, of course, 10 times worse is the latest one in the last 20 years is GMO glyphosates, Roundup. Now, this whole wheat thing that everybody's experiencing now, well, that started primarily in 1992 when they started spraying all the wheat with Roundup. After the wheat had grown, they spray it with Roundup to kill it. And so they don't have to scrape it off or get rid of bugs at that point. Everything's dead. The plant is, they just kill it. And now they can get twice as much wheat because they kill it as soon as it gets up there. And now the next crop comes forth and they get double the crop. This has been insanity. If you know, and we were all thinking back in the 90s, oh, it's whole wheat bread. Nothing said organic whole wheat bread. That's because nothing was organic. They were spraying it with the most toxic substance that you can put in your body practically that doesn't kill human cells. That's why it's legal. Roundup doesn't kill human cells. But 99% of our cells in the body are not human cells. So particularly,
right.
You know, this is all the bacteria in our gut and throughout our body. These beneficial bacteria are there, and Roundup kills that. So now we have gut dysbiosis always with autism, with ADHD. And the only reason boys have ADHD more than girls is girls do have more estrogen, and estrogen is a neuroprotector. But they're still being affected by all of this because the nutritional deficiency, as well as some of the gut problems, prevents them from making enough serotonin. So they have this, you know, this perfectionism, this self-interest, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough. They have this huge pressure on them. So they tend to perform better in school, but their happiness level is dramatically lower than it's ever been. And that's what's happening to girls. For boys, their performance, getting things done, following through, organizing themselves, that has dramatically dropped. For males, statistically, this is proven. We get down to the foundation of it is we need to heal the gut. Two things can heal the gut. Overnight, kids will get better benefit by just cutting out the wheats and the things that already, like, they've already sort of wiped out their gut with that because the gut can't digest the wheat. And, you know, putting glyphosates removes the bacteria that could digest the wheat for you. So now we've got allergies to wheat, goes into our body. So for a lot of people, they really need to cut out the bread. Some people absolutely, totally. Some people just rarely. But there's a supplement for that called Restore, R-E-S-T-O-R-E. And I have videos on all these things, so I'm not going to give a big talk on each one in our limited amount of time. But people go to MarsVenus.com, and they go to my health food store there. Instead of it just having products, it has the videos of all the kind of products that I think are the best ones. And you get an expert explaining what these things do for you rather than somebody in a health food store who probably knows a bit, but, you know, they haven't spent their life dedicated to learning this stuff.
They also get a commission.
Yeah, and so here suddenly you've got basically the information. It's at the Natural Foods Expo this year. This year. The number one product of the year, because of the research and the benefit, is a product called Restore. So Restore is a form of fulvic acid that you just take a teaspoon of it before you eat a meal, and it prevents you from having leaky gut. Leaky gut is our big problem, and leaky blood-brain barrier as well. So toxicity getting into the brain, toxicity leaving your gut into your body. This shouldn't be happening, but as soon as we started introducing glyphosates into our diet, we all have chronic leaky gut. To an extent, almost all of us. You know, some people may get by because they haven't eaten too much bread, or they haven't taken antibiotics. Antibiotics also wipe out the good bacteria in the gut. So if people have taken antibiotics, it's really important to replenish the gut with probiotics. And now there's a whole range of probiotics. One day it will be a much more developed science. Already it's the major medicine of the future, because every different strain of probiotics has some certain benefits, and they keep identifying and so forth. My favorite probiotic is one that I talk about. It comes from Switzerland. You can only make it at home, but you get the mix. So we have the mix for it that I import from Switzerland. It's called Bravo Probiotic Yogurt, and it's 42 strains of probiotics that makes a yogurt, and you eat the yogurt, and it helps to rebuild it in your gut to restore what's called the microbiome. So those are my two favorite gut products, is Restore and that will help the brain work so much better. Now, for symptomatic relief right away with these kids with ADHD, I talk about in my book that Ritalin and Adderall actually make the problem worse over time. Right away, you might get 80% get some benefit, just like a drug addict writes better when they take Ritalin, or when they take speed or Ritalin. There's no difference. They're all amphetamines. which cause brain injury. And parents aren't told this. That's why I had to write the book and show the real research, 70 pages of references showing how dangerous these things are. So don't take the bad stuff, but guess what? There's all this research showing that there's good stuff with no side effects that works just as good as Ritalin and Adderall, and even better because there's a long-term development and healing. So some quick ones is grapeseed extract, vitamin C. Combining those two things together helps to increase focus. Lithium orotate with its cofactors, magnesium, potassium, zinc, and calcium orotate. Its cofactors, all bonded to mother's milk, that's what the orotate is, will help to calm the brain. Doesn't suppress it, but that's called super minerals. And that's a product I formulated, been promoting for 15 years. Gets immediate results with anybody who has fast thinking or anxious thinking or your mind is looping on something. It's simply the minerals are not getting into the brain. And I didn't invent this. Dr. Hans Nieper in Germany did it. He developed it. He said, look, we measure the minerals. We're eating minerals. Already we're getting deficient amounts, but when you take supplements, they don't get into the brain. So mother's milk has a substance that brings it into the brain. If the minerals were actually in our food and there was fulvic acid in the food, it would get into the brain, but it doesn't. But when you bond it to mother's milk, it does. So the super minerals are like amazing. Lithium orotate is probably the most amazing mineral of all because the medical profession has got everybody scared from taking it. And that's because the psychiatrists give a toxic dose of lithium carbonate, different from lithium orotate. They give a toxic dose of lithium carbonate for bipolar brains. Now remember, bipolar brains are just Ferrari brains. They're all geniuses. Their brain looks just like a genius's, right, but they have gut dysbiosis. They have gut problems. And they have what's called leaky blood-brain barrier, so they got heavy metal toxicity in their brain, which throws off this genius ability. And so they become bipolar. They become very unstable, and lithium stabilizes it. But lithium carbonate, you have to give about 100 times the dose the brain needs to get it into the brain. Low-dose lithium orotate, just 4.5 milligrams to 25 milligrams a day for the super geniuses, is enough to keep the brain just clear and calm and so forth. But you should also take your super minerals or your lithium orotate if you take it straight, just a little extra. You always have to have the cofactors, but sometimes you need a little bit more lithium orotate under big stressful times. You need to also take iodine supplements. Iodine supplements are very important because what lithium does is it helps distribute, another function that it does, helps distribute iodine throughout the body. And if you're low in iodine, you might feel a little tiredness. So sometimes I get people writing to me, I felt tired after all my depression went away, but then my energy kind of dropped after a month of using this product. And I said, you just need to take some iodine. And they write back and say, how did you know? I feel so much better now because I've been doing this 15 years. So you got to balance certain things together. Omega-3s, by the way, have proven to be more effective than Ritalin and Adderall for certain groups of children, but some of the children get no effect. And then they find that if you add L-carnitine with it, those children then get effect. L-carnitine is something that if you had a healthy gut, your body would make it. And L-carnitine is what transports the omega-3 into the cell and utilizes it for energy. So you take what I do is I just recommend take all these things. There's not that much to take. Grapeseed extract, vitamin C, omega-3. Everybody should be doing these things just for optimal brain function. If it doesn't do it, then our L-carnitine and the super minerals. Any kid, and I've done thousands of people with this, who say it transformed their home life. Their children are behaving better, working better, studying better, less addictive tendencies to videos and sugar and all that. It's just, we need this extra help. We're living in a world of hyperstimulation and hormonal imbalance because we've got antibiotics that have wiped out our guts. We've got chlorinated water that wipes out our guts. We've got, and take a moment on that, which is, chlorine kills bacteria. That's what it does. It keeps the bad bacteria out of our water, but also kills the good bacteria. And when it goes into your stomach, it kills all the bad bacteria, but also kills good bacteria. It's like an antibiotic. So again, all these people are drinking chlorinated water. Then they're drinking water in plastic bottles. The PCBs in plastic bottles have now proven to be endocrine disruptors. And places where there's a lot of plastic in the water, the boys, and this is very common in America and Northern, they're hitting puberty 2 years late. and only one testicle drops. They have to do a medical procedure to get the other one to drop. And I mean, literally, they have no balls, or at least half. And the girls are hitting puberty twice 2 years earlier because they're starting to get their breasts and their hips and their period earlier than before. And that's all the xenoestrogens in the environment and plastics in the environment are doing this. So we want to make sure that we have glass bottles or metal bottles, steel bottles or glass bottles, and we want to have a water purifier, and we drink from that. Try to avoid the plastics as much as you can, and certainly avoid the chlorinated water. Those are like really key things for brain function and for health in the body.
Yeah, thank you so much for that perspective. And that's a huge area that I really drive in all my lectures, my writing, and just whatever I do in the world in this field in nutrition. I have to drive that in so deep, and we could keep pushing the button. We could really sit here and do this all day. Unfortunately,
it's true.
These conversations, John, really just inspire me so much more because I'm getting a circumference of perspective from people like you that have been leading your field for so long. It's really inspiring for me, and I know all the people listening. And the audience that listens to this, by the way, is a very eclectic group of people that you're ranging from people that are like been all through the raw food and superfood and herbal movement to people in the relationship worlds to entrepreneurs to your mom's your house mom, I guess you could say, raising her children at home. So yeah, I think this is going to be just really amazing for people to get so much more depth on the polarities and dynamics of what makes us men and women. So thank you.
Well said. And if we have a couple more minutes, I'd like to mention one more thing. Yes. Do we have a little bit more time?
Yeah, we have a couple minutes.
Okay, so yeah, just in terms of exercise, and all kinds of exercise are good exercise, but a lot of people don't have a lot of time for exercise. And I'm very busy, and so I used to do gym, and I used to do workouts, and I used to do aerobics, and I used to do lots of exercise. And when you're writing books and traveling all the time, you just don't have the time to do it. I don't have the time to do it. So I really looked for the most time-efficient exercise, and I'm going to tell it to you right now. The Japanese were doing it. I figured it out for myself on my own, but they also figured it out. But I feel like I add a different dimension to it that nobody's figured out yet. So I want to share this because people get results right away. And it's called burst exercise. That's what the Japanese call it. Interval training is what we call it in America. Uh-huh. And it's where you do high intensity for 10 to 20 seconds. And then you kind of, walk a little bit or pause for a little, 20 seconds or something, and then go back into it. And what I found is it's not so much about just pausing for 20 seconds, 30 seconds. What you want to do in exercise is just communicate. Everything in this world, everything in the body is about signals and communication. If your brain gets the message that those muscles need more oxygen, then your brain will supply it. It's like the universe provides, but you've got to communicate effectively. And so what you do is you run for 10, 20 seconds. I just walk out my driveway, walk down about 30 yards. I'm on a hill, and then run up as fast as I can. Okay, it takes about 10 seconds. There's a chair. I just sit down, and you sit down for 4 minutes. Okay, and that's important. What happens for the first 90 seconds is you tend to be out of breath like this. Your exhale is way bigger than your inhale. Now that is basically describing what's called hypoxia. Hypoxia means your cells are not getting enough oxygen. You're still in the aerobic zone. You're not in the anaerobic zone. If you just keep running after 10 seconds, you're going to go into anaerobic zone, which is saying, I don't need oxygen. I can just ferment sugar for my energy. So you want to stay in the aerobic zone, but push it to the max. And that happens in just 10 seconds of full out. So you do 10 seconds or 20 seconds if it's level ground. But for me, I do it on a hill. So 10 seconds, my muscles, everything is just pushed to the max. Then I just rest. And when you rest, the first thing most people would do, and this is what all the other interval trainings don't say, or the Japanese burst training doesn't say, is they don't tell people, and this is the most important thing, is don't catch your breath. That's what people will tend to do. They'll be out of breath, and then they'll take a deep breath. Hold it for a moment. And and then exhale. And now they're not out of breath. The whole point is to get out of breath. That communicates from the muscle to the brain back that the cell needs more oxygen. Mm-hmm. In order to get more oxygen, you need two things. You need more capillaries, one, which is what training does. That's why training works. You're telling your body you need more capillaries. But even more so, you're telling your brain that you need more mitochondria, the energy factories in your muscles, so your body's more efficient in utilizing the oxygen which is available to burn fat as a source of energy. Now, when you run like that, you're fully in sympathetic mode. That's stress mode. If you let yourself be out of breath for 90 seconds, your breath will bring you back to your parasympathetic mode. Around that time, your breath has settled a bit. It's still out of breath, but it's at a point where you can now do it through your nose. So now you close your mouth. You feel like you have to try to get enough oxygen because you get less air in your nose. So you'll be out of breath again a little bit more. Just takes a moment. You kind of go. Don't take a deep breath in, but stay out of breath for another 2.5 minutes. That 2.5 minutes is called parasympathetic mode, where now your body can actually heal itself, regenerate itself, correct itself. It's called the repair mode. Mm-hmm. So you want that last 2.5 minutes. Now, not everybody will find 2.5 minutes. Their mind will be wandering and they'll be thinking and whatever. That will slow it down. They'll be back in the sympathetic mode. So maybe they can only stay for 3 minutes total. But eventually, after a few more repetitions, you can pretty much get to 4 minutes quite easily. Where you push yourself so that you'll be out of breath for 4 minutes is the whole key. Now, during that time, right from the beginning, when you're out of breath, that's called hypoxia. That's where your cells are not getting enough oxygen, and that is proven to be one of the major sources of stimulating amazing reaction in your body, which some of these places call the afterburn. Well, if you look at what is the afterburn that keeps burning fat all day long, the afterburn is the production of something called heat shock proteins. Heat shock proteins are out of this world fantastic. They are what regenerates brain cells. When I had Parkinson's 15 years ago, that is the degeneration of the dopamine receptors in a certain part of the brain. I regenerated all of those parts of my brain, and it's the heat shock proteins that do it. Now, I got to those heat shock proteins by using hot water therapy, which regenerates, where I reverse autism in kids, ADHD in kids, by regenerating those brain cells, upregulating brain cells and regenerating, restoring them. These heat shock proteins will do that. They are your body's last line of defense. So let's say you have a viral infection, and your glutathione levels are not high enough to fight it off. Glutathione, the super antioxidant that your body makes, that everybody loses as they get older, but it's the fountain of immortality, basically, youthfulness, glutathione. So glutathione, if you're making it, will protect your brain from degeneration. But if you have viral infections, glutathione is used up to reduce the oxidative stress of the viral infection. Then if your body says, oh my God, I'm going to die because I don't have enough glutathione, then your body will kick into gear and create a fever. Fever is your body's last defense against bacteria and viral infections, and it's producing these heat shock proteins, which will stop bacterial infection, which will stop viral infections. It's amazing, and it regenerates the damage that was done. This is your secret remedy for everything. Is the heat shock proteins, which is now being researched. There's like 15 of them. There's HSP 10, then 20, and 30. Soon it'll be like B vitamins. What produces this heat shock protein? What produces that one? But basically, this running technique, you repeat it 5 or 6 times. You do it 6 times. It only takes 20 minutes. Only have to do it twice a week. The heat shock proteins will last for 48 hours after you make them. And so, you just do it every few days. And you don't have to do all this exercise. And you can feel your body burning a little bit throughout the day. If you want to increase that burn, take some niacin about 10 minutes before your run. And that will certainly increase your heat shock proteins. And the third thing, if you're wanting to burn fat really efficiently and regenerate your body and brain and help your body be healthy, even to reduce tumors and so forth, which is what heat shock proteins do as well, and stop metastases. Basically, any infection you got, heat shock proteins is your body's best defense. This exercise helps you with that. Also, there's a supplement I want most people to know about they don't know about, and it's called Thunder God Root, extract 20 to 1. Thunder God Root is a Chinese herb, which is the miracle herb of the century with so many people getting cancer and so many people with obesity. It's the Chinese herb for obesity, because what does it do? What do heat shock proteins do? They burn fat. They call it lipolysis. Your body heats up, and then after you've done your run, if you really want to get that belly fat off, then lie down under a blanket for 20 minutes and put an ice pack on your belly. Ice pack, ice, really cold ice. They have these gel packs. Ice will also produce heat shock proteins, which stimulate fat burning and lipolysis, the burning of fat. So this is like great stuff for people to know. It's my most recent blog I just wrote on that one. But this is, if you go to MarsVenus.com, Thunder God Root, and you want to lose weight, it's my latest on how to lose weight very quickly for those of you that are getting older.
Thank you for that perspective and that breakdown. I really appreciate that. And I was going to ask, how can everybody tune into your work? Obviously, your books, and especially your original book, are pretty much legendary. But is that the best website for people to tune into all your work?
Well, you mentioned that you're 30 years old, and I'd say the best thing you'll find at my website, it's MarsVenus.com. Every day I have an hour video show that I do. I recorded about 300 of them, and now we just rotate them because the ideas are timeless when it comes to relationship. Then what you'll see there is weekly new blogs as well by my daughter Lauren, who's your age, and she is so tuned in to the new challenges that younger people are facing, even more so than I am, because it's what she lives every day, and that's who she coaches every day. And she's very entertaining. So as a guy, I suggest you check out her blogs called Winning Moves. That's where she's describing her partner and some of the things he does. I read those sections and then go and do it with my wife. He has really good... He's my videographer, and so when I'm doing my videos, I'm often just sort of giving him the ideas so he'll be the best partner for my daughter. They've been together 5 years. So really happy so she's really good. I suggest checking her out as well as my blogs. And then the cool thing for the nutrition side of it is if you go to my health food store or my health blogs, I really talk about every health condition from the point of view of how we create it, how our environment's creating it, how our thoughts are creating it, and what nutritional supplements that are traditional, that are sometimes new as well, that are all natural without side effects. That's the key, is take medicine which is natural and no side effects, as opposed to these toxic things that have side effects. I stay away from that. And that's all available. There's a health food store there. You can see a lot of the products I recommend and a 10-minute video on each one explaining why it might be helpful for some people.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And it was just a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, well, thank you again. And, you paused for a moment, but I mentioned before my book, Conscious Men. That's the most recent one, Mastering the Man Code. And then there's the one before that is Staying Focused in a Hyper World. And, of course, the classic is Minute from Mars, which is still valuable for anybody who gets into a relationship. A lot of the ideas in that book, almost 30 years later, have become cliche. But actually, you get to the subtleties of all those ideas as well. Men go to their caves. Men try to fix things. Little things make a difference. How to create lasting love, romance. Men are like rubber bands. Women are like waves. These kind of basic metaphors that have become part of our lexicon, you really get it fully explained in that book. It is quite fun to read.
Beautiful. Oh, okay. Well, everyone out there listening, thank you so much for tuning in. And this was one of our extended interviews, and for obvious reason, because this man is clearly a wealth of knowledge and just so much incredible insight. I'm going to be listening to this over and over, and I highly recommend that all of you do too. Once again, John Gray, thank you so much for joining us. And everybody out there, much aloha, and we will check in with you next time.